All right, so yes, so I think Keith and Kyle are on. So since this started 2 years ago, we've had a lot of changes. And so Sherry Sanders is was the kind of, actually Brent was the ringleader here. Brent Griffin in Prairie County 2 years ago was talking to Keith and Sherry and said, hey, I'm having a lot of issues with pecan people in our county. Are y'all? And Keith said, sure, we are too. And Sherry said, we got some new folks growing pecan. So let's all kind of have a meeting of the minds and get together and see how we can help these folks. And so since then, our team has changed a lot. Brent actually passed away within the last 2 years, and Max Coffin was there in Lonoke County, and he's now left. And then we had Matt Mahan, and so he's now left. And so now we have Kyle Sanders. So he is now the new guy on our team. And so hopefully we can keep this team for a while and not make any more changes. So Sherry Sanders and Keith Perkins and Amy Talent in Prairie County there, and myself, and then Kyle Sanders in Lonoke County. We're all the ones that have been working on this for the last 2 years. So the main reason why we are doing this is we have research that's being done, of course, at the U of A, and then those specialists are training our county agents, and then we're then turning this information back around to our citizens, whether that be commercial producers or mom and pop folks. So the main people that we've been helping are smaller orchards, not really big commercial production. So we're helping those people that might have 5 trees to 25 trees, something like that. So we're extending our research and unbiased information to our county clientele. So how are we doing this for other county agents that might be online and might want to help or do this in their own counties? Of course, we get IPM grants that are funded each year. We write those proposals as county extension agents, and we get this money funded to us to help do our demo work. And so we have done this the last 2 years as a group of extension agents, and it started Lonoke, White, and Prairie counties. So we're the tri-county pecan demonstration. So we do insect trapping, disease monitoring. Recently, with the help of some of you guys, we were able to get some weather stations installed in both of our orchards. And then also irrigation sensors and telemetry, and we're going to talk a lot about those here in a little bit. So those are some additions that we didn't necessarily start out doing, but have added along the way. These funds also help us pay for travel and supplies. Any kind of supplies that we do need are, you'll see here in a little bit, our traps and our pheromones and things that we need to have to be able to do this work. So we're very appreciative of these IPM grants that allow us to do this work. So the first year we started off at the Ryder Brothers. That's an orchard in Prairie County. We actually put on a workshop that you'll see some pictures of later on, just to kind of judge what kind of interest we had in these 3 counties, who we have there, what kind of growers we have, and what their issues were. And we had about 80 people in attendance, and we had that at ASU-BB. It was actually the week before we shut down across the state for COVID. So we were right under the line. And so that was, these folks came out of that meeting. They said, hey, we want some help. We just bought a bunch of trees. They had it's this set of land that's surrounded by row crops. But they said, hey, we're row croppers and we're getting over into pecans, and we're actually doing both, and we need some help. We got the row crops down, but we need some help in pecans. So we've been there for 2 years, but that was our initial demo spot. 55-year-old orchard or so. And some people say, well, that's too old. Well, that's what we got. So that's what we're working with. We don't get to pick and choose who. They just call and say, hey, we need your help. And so we do that. So these trees are somewhere around 60 foot. I mean, they're mature, huge trees. This is a non-irrigated demonstration site. It is really near the White River that runs through there and the bayou that backs up to it. So there's a lot of water around, a lot of irrigated row crops around, but this particular place is not irrigated. The second place come along with Keith, talking to some of his producers, some of his pecan people in his county. It's our first year to be there. These are about, there was some science and some research done. We figured out they're about 35 years old, this orchard. They have recently purchased this property, so we were having to do some research to figure that out. These trees are around 30 foot tall. They are irrigated, which is nice. That's a little bit different than what we're used to. So it is an irrigated orchard. And they're also a berry farm, and then they run cattle in that area around. And so it's important for us to kind of know what's around these orchards as well. So as far as insect trapping and monitoring, you guys have seen this, the insects over on the right-hand side there. You've seen that graphic before, kind of when you trap for certain insects. And so a lot of the time we're looking for aphids. We make weekly visits to both of these orchards. We try to split up, and sometimes it takes all of us to get what we need to get done that week. So aphids is something we're always looking for. Of course, 1 black or 25 yellow is that threshold. And then we look for their presence on plant tissue on the back of the leaves, and look for honeydew on the ground and on the other leaf tissue near it. Each week we're out running. We have purchased these traps that you see here in these pictures. They're different kind for different insect species. And so it took us a little while to be able to identify some of these insects. It's hard coming from row crop people to learn a whole new set of insects. So we have been trying to do that. Of course, we send a lot of pictures off to specialists to try to get help there, identifying some of these insects. Some of the yellow pyramid trap here, you'll see the clear tote little box on top that actually holds the pheromone. Some of the other traps do not use pheromones, and so that took us a little while to figure all of that out. So then the pecan nut case bearer, the stink bugs, and the pecan weevil are our main things that we're trapping for, and then of course the aphids each week. And we're using different types of traps from different companies, trying to see which ones are the best and actually how you use them. And then we are relaying that information to anybody that may come and ask for that. But weekly trap catches that we take, we report those in Farm Dog, which is what row crop agents use to collect all of their monitoring data during the week. And then we send them off to the specialists that are in charge of our IPM grants. Of course, the disease triangle is something that we really stress when we talk to these, to some of our producers or even our homeowners. With pecans, you do have some diseases that are going to be there inevitably. So we try to explain this to them, that the disease triangle, there's a lot of education that goes along with all of these weekly runnings that we do. And so we always try to tie in the educational component, and we're not just checking traps for them. So with disease monitoring, we're looking for pecan scab. And so that's the main one that we're looking for. And we're using the pecan scab hour model that's on our website. I think Dr. Lee is working on that. And so we've been using that, promoting it. Of course, powdery mildew and downy spot. So we're always looking at diseases, trying to identify diseases, and helping those producers be able to see those. So when we started this, we had in Prairie County, they had some sprayers, some commercial sprayers that they actually went and purchased just for this. And so we were lucky that they had the ability to do this. They were used to row crop stuff, which is totally different than this. And so they were not used to having to have a spray program where they would have to spray on certain dates. So we had set them up just a little chart with some recommended timings, the stage of the orchard, what products we wanted them to use, and then taught them about the frac codes and how they needed to rotate out their chemistry. So it was a lot of education and teaching on the front end, because you would think people that were row crop producers, they would know these types of things because this is their livelihood. But sometimes we find that they may have been farming for 20 years, but they don't really understand why we tell them to rotate their chemistry. So there's a lot of education on the front end. I'm going to let Keith talk about this slide here, and then he's got a few other ones that he's going to talk about. And Keith, if you just want to tell me when you want me to go forward, I will.
Okay. Of course, Jan talked about why we use the different types of modes of action, but why calibrate? And of course, calibration is extremely important. We need to know our gallons per acre, need to know our rates, but more importantly, we need to know our coverage in our pecan trees. Some of the things that we learned is that coverage is critical. Most our fungicides and insecticides are contact, and we got to get that good coverage. One thing that we found, of course, we'll talk a little bit about this, but it's carried over. I've actually calibrated several sprayers here in Lonoke County, and we had one particular producer had 2 different varieties of pecans trees in his orchard, and he got good coverage and good control of his insecticide with in one of the varieties, and the other one he did not. We went out and looked at his calibration, and we put these spray cards up at different heights in the tree. We tried to do 10, 20, 30, and 40 feet. And in spray, we had to make some adjustments on his sprayer, and then we was able to get good coverage in both varieties. And it was a coverage reason that he did not get the insect control that he was looking for. That coverage is extremely important. Of course, that's going to vary on our tree size. We had those 60-foot trees in Prairie County, 35-foot trees in Lonoke County. The other thing, of course, depends on the season. You know, for early season, our coverage is not near as critical because our leaves are not as high. And of course, the age of the tree. And then how are trees planted? Are they rows or random? The variety. The last thing that's extremely important, we found this out when we were trying to calibrate this, is once the wind gets up and you get any wind speed at all, when you're trying to push this mist up to 60 foot, you can't do it. So you got to make sure that they know that on a windy day, they cannot make their application and get the coverage they're looking for. So we just got to make sure on that they know the rates. One of the producers that we calibrated was actually using 2x rate of his insecticides and fungicides because he did not know his gallons per acre. It's easy to calibrate any sprayer, but you've got to be able to know how to do that. We wind up putting these hoses on the sprayer and catching from each individual nozzle, and was able to reach our target goal. For us in row crops, you know, we think 10 gallons per acre is kind of what we're shooting for a lot of times. And out of our airplanes, we're putting 3 gallons per acre. And we have, you know, sometimes our pecan growers say we'll just get a airplane to spray our tree, and you know, they may be putting out 3 to 5 gallons per acre. But what we see on these orchards is we need 100 gallons per acre to get that coverage. So we need to make sure that we are achieving the coverage, our gallons per acre, in knowing that. So that's pretty much all I've got on calibration.
Okay, I'll go ahead and cover this one, and then we're going to get to irrigation if you want to talk about that here in a second, Keith.
Yes, ma'am.
Sanitation, we always stress sanitation to our producers. It doesn't matter if they have 100 trees or 2 trees, sanitation is really important. And so we explained to them about removing all their disease shucks, the leaves, the limbs, keeping everything clean around the floor of their orchard during early spring and early fall. Talk about burning those residues to suppress that inoculum that's building up underneath those trees. Because of course y'all know that all of the things that fall on the ground can overwinter diseases, and then you have your infection for the next year already on your floor of your orchard. So here's some irrigation, which is what we added into the Lonoke location this year. Keith, you want to talk about this?
Sure. Of course, with irrigation, we need 60 inches of total water for our growing season from April to October. That's 10 inches a month. the whole average for the whole state of Arkansas is only 49.56 inches a year. So we actually need more water than we're actually getting from rainfall, and that's over a 12-month period. One thing we know that we've done with these sensors is we put these at the same depth that we do in our row crops. We put them at 6, 12, 18, and 30 inches. We know that even in row crops that we're pulling from that 30-inch depth, and we're monitoring this particular monitor here takes those readings, and then we can upload them and look at those anytime. When we're looking at this mature pecan orchard, we may need 6,000 gallons of water per day, basically equals 1 to 2 inches per week. When we think about row crops, I think about corn being a heavy user of a 1/3 inch a day when it's at its peak, but pecans are even more so. They use a 1/2 inch of water per day during their peak. Early season, they're using a 1/4 inch of water per day. So you're talking about, a 1/2 inch per day. So you're talking about 3 inches per week during the peak. Of course, we got to remember our critical time is that end of July. And we got to make sure we have irrigation during that time. That leads to that large fruit size. The late summer, early fall, is when we get our well-filled nuts. We have to water until shuck opens and splits. These sensors are allowing us to know how much water is in our soil profile and allowing us to time our irrigation. So with that, we're able to predict currently. On feedling pecans, we have a irrigation system that's a sprinkler system. It's set up and it's low to the ground, and it's not watering the foliage. So we do have to be concerned about that if our sprinkler system is set too high. With irrigation, if we think about return on investment, regardless of the crop we're growing, that is the one thing that we can invest in that's going to make us the most money over time, because we'll get consistent yields with irrigation, and we know that with irrigation we can have a yield pretty much every year. So we got to keep that in mind. With irrigation, we got to also consider our water source, our tree spacing, and then what soil type we have. We have a silt loam soil in Lone Oak and Prairie County both, and we have a clay layer underneath. That's why we have so many rice acres here. So we're really good about holding water in the soil profile. Luckily, so far this year, we've caught a couple of timely rains in Lone Oak. We just caught 1.2 inches over the weekend. Of course, that's only good for about 2 to 3 days during this growth cycle, but we have a lot of water in our soil profile, and we're allowing our trees to use that at this point in time. So we're able to possibly irrigate less and be more efficient with it by knowing with our sensors. The other thing our sensors do is after irrigation is it allows us to know how deep into the soil profile our water went. That's pretty much all I've got on irrigation.
Okay, and this one, we've put the actual telemetry unit that will send an alert to your phone and let you know when you've got to, we can set an alert trigger so we can know, hey, he needs to go ahead and irrigate. He needs to start now, so that in a couple of days they're not stressed or hurting for water. So this is the telemetry unit that we have, and it is set to an app on our phone. The other orchard does not have an irrigation system. We only had one telemetry unit, but we did have 4 soil moisture sensors. So we put just the soil moisture sensors and a handheld reader that we carry out into the orchard with us at the other, because it's not as detrimental, because there's nothing we can do about it. They don't have an irrigation system, but we are keeping up with the other demonstration orchards, the levels of water in that profile. So what we do with all of this information and all of this work, we've had, of course, production meetings. We had one, the one I was speaking of before, in 2020, we had 80 homeowner and small orchard folks that showed up there. to ASU-BB. That's kind of where we got started and got interest and got the questions that these folks were having. And then again in 2021, right when we opened back up, we were able to have another kind of a part two, a round two to that first production meeting. Not as many folks showed up, about 20 homeowners that came there, and we were able to give them information as well. We also did a hands-on grafting workshop that afternoon with those same folks. Of course, we always want to share the producer's perspective and what we're doing and how it helps them and what else they need. So we meet with them weekly. If they're available, they'll be there with us as we check traps. If not, we're texting them a lot, just keeping up with them and giving them the recommendations that we might have for them at that time. And then we also invited them both times to give their perspective at the meetings, kind of what they've been seeing, what they're having issues with, because those producers will learn a lot from each other and just from having those opportunities to share their struggles. And then there's the pictures of our grafting workshop. We actually went out to the Lone Oak orchard and did some grafting there with the homeowners and the orchard owners, and then some of their farm hands that work with these pecans on a daily basis. And then we actually did that at our meeting too, and that's one of our producers that's practicing his grafting technique there in our conference room. We make sure that we send this out. As far as social media, all of us have social media pages that we share, but we also have one as a group, and we display all of our work, our trap catches, things like that, recommendations and growing tips. We try to do that on a regular basis to keep our following with us. We all have newsletters that we put all of this information out into those newsletters, commercial and homeowner, horticulture newsletters. And then of course we share with our master gardeners too. And as ag agents, we are all required to have demo booklets in the Delta. And so we will share all this information. You see the pecans there on the front page of that. That's just the White County demo booklet, but all the other counties have those as well. And we put all of our research or whatever we might have learned or gathered from our work in these demo booklets, and then we send them out to our producers, homeowners, the public, anybody that may want them. So here's some pictures of just some of our work, some of our traps. There's the handheld reader, and then just some meetings we've had with producers out there. There's Keith putting in some soil probes. So it's been a good experience, just helping those folks that need us. They're not big commercial, their paychecks aren't coming from this. But, you know, it does supplement income in both of these situations, supplement income. And one of them is more kind of a hobby farm and the other is actually supplementing. So we've learned a lot through all of this. We're still learning every time we go out there each week. We're learning things, and our producers like going with us and learning alongside us. So it's been a real group effort. And if anybody has any questions, there's 3 of us from the team that are on here, and we'll be happy to answer whatever you got for us.